Oftentimes, we watch videos and read articles about kids who ran away from their parents for many reasons. It could be for sensitive reasons, such as boundaries being crossed, or even for rather unreasonable reasons like, my mom asked me to get a job and stop being a freeloader. In both cases, families end up broken up, and it's not something either party wants to talk about. But that's surprisingly not the case for this TikTok creator known as Doormat Mom. For her, being estranged from her kids created a doorway to fame. Her TikTok account is filled with videos where she's either talking about her estrangement from her kids, responding to comments from people who disagree with her views.
Y'all parents out there whose kids have gone no contact, and you're sitting here.
Joy Reid got canceled because she has nothing worthwhile to add to the conversation either. Maybe do better.
Or simply just talking about her book on being estranged.
So I'll be with Tommy Lahren on Tommy Lahren is Fearless, which broadcasts on Fox Nation and Outkick. I'll be on both this week, talking about the Doormat Mom No More book, conversation, movement, Facebook group, and new Spotify and YouTube podcasts.
For Doormat Mom, if she's not talking about estrangement, she's talking about estrangement. Get it? That is literally her entire life at this point. You would think that her life as a parent was a huge intentional setup to end up as an estranged mom, or that she had no other life before she became an estranged mom. If you're as tired of hearing the words estrange and estrangement as I am of saying it, well, brace up. Doormat Mom has a lot more where that came from. It's her most used word, and that says a lot about her. So who is Doormat Mom? Laura Wellington, now more known by her TikTok alias Doormat Mom, is a mother of 4. Before stepping into her current persona, she lived other lives. One of the highlights of her life is writing. Before her most recent book, she authored books like Be Careful What You Wish For, What to Do When Jane Knows Dick About Dating, and some other books about dieting and self-help. She once spoke in a TEDx event sometime in 2018, where we noticed something quite important about her as a person that has also played out in a recent stumble into unfortunate fame.
You are the blood in my veins and the beating of my heart. You are my first waking thought and my last sigh before sleeping. You are the bone of my bone and the breath of my breath. You can open your eyes now. Beautiful, right? Yeah. That poem was written by Juliette Marelier. I learned of it for the first time when it was texted to me one morning by the man in my life, along with the words, "That is how I feel about you."
Great poem, fantastic partner from the sound of things, but underscoring it all is the subtle introduction into Laura's world of "it is all about me." TEDx events are often characterized by conversations around different topics, by different speakers, all with the sole aim of leaving the listeners with lessons that should better them as individuals. Laura's was a huge deviation from that norm.
I'd go on to own a number of businesses, write several books, create an award-winning children's television series, launch a celebrity blog, become a licensed foster parent, and raise now 5 kids to be surgeons, scientists, actors, and athletes. And I travel the world. And what's interesting is throughout all this crazy and busy, never once did I lack for suitors. Not once. These men would commonly say to me, "You're different. You're different." And I'd respond back to them in my head, of course.
She spoke for about 11 minutes in her session, and cumulatively, she did not spend up to 2 minutes giving any meaningful lesson to her audience. It felt like she had found her time to shine without a care in the world about what those right in front of her thought. Laura's story already gives the undertone of a narcissist. What made it worse was the way she carried herself. You could see it in her eyes that she was performing, not teaching. Every sentence felt like it was crafted to impress, not to connect with the actual people seated in the room. The way she tells the story, it sounds like an awakening. She lost her husband at 35, realized just how short life could be, and decided to start living voraciously. What she failed to add was that she decided to start living for herself. With kids in her life, yes, but for herself all the same. If there was an aim to listing out all her achievements, maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't have put her out there as a narcissist. But that's the problem. Her entire session could have ended just fine without any of the information she decided to spill.
As I opened my nook up to read, I became distracted by two women seated at the bar having a very excited conversation. One was telling the other about an extremely bad date she had had recently. And the question became whether or not she should see this man again, despite how horrendously he had treated her. Now, frankly, I knew the answer to that, and I wasn't even on the date, okay? But she didn't, which was really, really concerning. So as I continued to eavesdrop, three things happened. My ears began to bleed at what I was hearing. My eyes rolled to the back of my head, and I laughed out loud. None of it nice, I know. It was unintentional, and at least I'm honest about it.
If we're assuming that, just as she said, this pub was somewhere outside her hotel, it means that besides her, there were other people present. And definitely someone else overheard the conversation the two women were having. Now, the difference between Doormat Mom and that other person is self-control. We all overhear conversations every now and then. Nobody's going to call you out for that. However, reacting so obviously to a conversation that you are not a part of tells badly on your ability as a person to keep to yourself, and really just goes to show that you need to be noticed. Also, playing off the rudeness like it was nothing, just saying at least I'm honest about it, is not the same as taking accountability for your actions. It's not brave, it's just deflective. Honestly, without humility, it's just ego in disguise. If you're going to interrupt, react, and draw attention to yourself over something that had nothing to do with you, the least you can do is own up properly when talking about it.
Reaction caused these two women to turn towards me and draw me into their conversation. And what they got from me over the next hour were needed lessons. Lessons in self-respect. Lessons in valuing yourself as a human being and as a woman. Lessons in holding your standards high in dating, in life, but also in...
Of course, laugh your way into a conversation that does not concern you, then still make it all about yourself. What I would have loved to hear was how she helped the woman who she talks about, not how she suddenly began to give them lessons from her treasure trove of wisdom and unending knowledge. Now hear me out, I'm not saying that Laura has a narcissistic personality disorder, but she does display traits of someone with NPD. Cleveland Clinic's outline some characteristic features of someone with NPD, and from this story alone, we can count 3. Breaking it down, it's very clear to see a grandiose sense of self-importance and belief in superiority. You get into a conversation to help someone, and what you come out with was how you show just how wise you are, supposedly. A need for admiration. Let's face it, that is what she would expect to be the reaction of the audience, that they would be enamored by her for reaching out to help that poor lady who couldn't detach herself from her predicament. Or is it her lack of empathy? I mean, when someone is narrating an ordeal as sensitive as a bad relationship that they're finding it hard to get out of, nothing about that is meant to be funny, and it definitely shouldn't be written off with an, at least I'm honest about it. Laura may not be a bad person, but she certainly has some bad traits that need working on, not defending. Now on to the crux of the matter, her estrangement from her daughter, which has become her entire reason for existing at this point. Laura has taken estrangement from her kid in a way that no other parent has, trying to make it look like something to embrace. What's even more concerning about the whole Doormat Mom move is that she's estranged from just one of her kids, her last-born daughter. If you have 3 kids who you claim have good relationships with you, why exactly are you making such a fuss about just one who's decided that she would rather live her life without you in it?
Were you a really good parent who did the best they could, and yet your child has decided to be an ungrateful little bastard as an adult?
Ungrateful little bastard? That's how she describes her own daughter. Relationships undergo strains, and that's a well-known fact, but what would make a mother call a child she has raised for years an ungrateful little bastard? Time and time again, we've seen how oversharing has cost families their peace. Now it's oversharing with the sole aim of ridiculing your own child, all in the pursuit of clout.
If that's you, join me here. Follow me on this account and actually join my Facebook group, Doormat Mom No More. There are a lot of really good parents out there who did everything that they could, and yet their kids are ungrateful little bastards. We need to connect here. We need to support each other, and we need to talk about it.
And why exactly is she trying to make her problem every other person's problem? What's with the rallying call to connect and talk about it? Not everybody lacks the decency to handle internal issues internally without crying about it to total strangers whose only aim is to goad them on to totally disassociate them from their own family. That's exactly what Laura's call is aimed at, totally breaking whatever chance at reconciliation there is. Sadly, not everyone would see it this way. Sometimes a voice in trying times is what people need, and they would unknowingly cling to whoever seems like a helper. In her book, Doormat Mom No More, she gives a background of what went on between her and her daughter that led to her estrangement. Mind you, this is her own narration of the events. The other party has not publicly refuted or confirmed this, so it's best to take it with a pinch of salt. There's no telling just how far a narcissist is willing to go to spin the story in her favor. I just can't anymore. Those are the words that overtook me, the ones I finally accepted, following the crushing disbelief that I felt upon hearing my youngest daughter tell me that I wouldn't be attending her wedding in Australia. I wasn't invited. From her account of things, her daughter did not give her an invite to her wedding, and that was the beginning of their no-contact life as mom and daughter. She calls her daughter a digital nomad, which means that she was quite the mover. Basically, she had a daughter who, for the most part, was not even around her, but she somehow managed to get into a mess like this with her. There definitely is more to this story than Laura lets on. Nobody just tells their mom not to show up for their wedding, especially when their dad is totally out of the picture, if there's not been an already existing history of clashes between them. But according to the doormat mom herself, she's been a good parent for as long as she can remember.
Good parents fall into the situation of estrangement too. And it's not that they did anything wrong. It's the fault of their narcissistic victimhood mentality kids. And yet you're also ready to jump on the bandwagon of the child and shame parents who don't deserve it. That's so incredibly wrong. The reality is, if you really understood the full story, you might just change your mind. So don't be so ready to come in for the rescue, because you might be saving the wrong person.
It's always about good parents this, good parents that. The way she talks about the topic of being estranged, you would think that parents could literally do no harm, when in the real sense of things, many parents have done pretty terrible damage to their kids. In her book, the account of her interaction with her daughter is less of that and more of an opportunity to buttress her constant yapping about how she's a good parent. She does not miss any opportunity to toot her own horn. Here it's about how she's a competent seamstress and a loving mother, like she deserves an award for being what every mother is expected to be towards her own child. Then comes the guilt tripping. It comes from a woman who was forced to bury her best friend and husband at age 35, leaving me to raise a slew of kids on my own. At the center of all my concern and efforts were my 4 young children. I refused to allow my family to become another tragic statistic, beyond the one we already were at the loss of their father. This is not someone who is trying to be honest about what went on between herself and her daughter. This is more of a careful setup, portraying her as the mother that was left heartbroken even after offering her life on the altar of service to her kids. She doesn't stop there. It did include, however, working tirelessly to parent and provide. I spent hours balancing keeping the lights on against becoming an absentee parent. At a certain point, onlookers would tell me that I had conquered being supermom. All these high praises she directed her way came in at the point where she should have been giving more depth to her relationship with her daughter and what could have been the possible cause of their current relationship status. In a video she posted advising other parents to let go of their estranged kids, she emphasizes this mindset where the parent is never the one in the wrong.
Moms, you have to stop apologizing to your estranged kids.
How is this even sensible advice in any world? This is a clear disregard for whatever may have caused the need for a no-contact enforcement. As much as kids can be wrong, parents as well can be very wrong. It's weird that any adult would advise their fellow adults not to apologize, more so to a child with whom a good relationship is slipping away really fast.
You do. Here's the deal. Just because their experience in the story of your lives together, they term horrible, doesn't invalidate your experience in your lives together.
Let me rephrase what she's actually saying. Whatever view your kids have of your lives together is as good as nonsense. Believe only in what you think or perceive to be the true state of things. Not only is she narcissistic, she's also trying to breed an army of narcissists. Only this time it's parents who'd rather be all about themselves than take any thought what their kids think.
And if the only way that you can have a relationship with these kids is by acknowledging that their experience is the only one in the room, let them go. Because you still have an experience to live. They'll find the truth in time. Just let them go.
In another video, she still insists on disregarding whatever the kids have to say.
Have you hit the point yet where you just simply don't care about their why anymore? Their why. Doesn't mean you don't care about them. It just means you're tired of caring about their why. You already know that you've done everything in your power to help them solve their why, or even make amends for their why. But the why just keeps coming back and slapping you in the face. You're not alone. Many of us here know that point.
Not caring about their why anymore is crazy. Remember the traits of someone with narcissistic personality disorder. Now we have entitlement and lack of empathy both playing out, which is weird because in another video, she found some very baseless defense for her acting the way she's doing.
The moment you overstep the boundaries of a highly empathetic person, an empath, would be the same moment you begin to lose their empathy and begin to be met with their vigilance instead. You see, a highly empathetic person would give you the benefit of the doubt until they could no more, and they would be willing to go above and beyond to whatever they feel that they need to empathize or interact with. However, this is where toxic people, or people that cannot respect boundaries, get confused. They will take this empathy for granted. They will think it's a vulnerability, it's a weakness, because they cannot comprehend it. So they'll try to exploit it as much as they possibly can. But what they don't realize is, once a highly empathetic person begins to understand that their empathy is serving no purpose, or the person that they're trying to empathize with is taking advantage of them, then their vigilance would be triggered, and what was once empathy is now high alert.
She would have us all believe that, contrary to what all her own videos say about her, she's an overly empathetic person, not a narcissist. Quite manipulative if you ask me. One thing's for sure, Laura does not know how to hold herself accountable for her bad decisions and actions. Someone else needs to take the blame when she's out of line. In this case, her daughter is the fall guy.
They only get angry because the truth you speak contradicts the lie they live.
Again, she's the only truthful one in all of this. Her daughter is living the lie and has refused to come to the light. The irony in all this is that her daughter has not started a TikTok account just like her loving mom to talk down on her and rally support for herself at the detriment of her mom's public reputation. Ideally, tantrums of this magnitude would be expected to come from the child, right? Well, it's quite obvious who the adult child is in all of this. One other troubling thing about Laura is how she keeps referring to adults as adult children.
Good parents get to be themselves in life, and they don't need to validate their ungrateful adult children's experience. It is perfectly okay to offer your ungrateful adult children a proving ground. Some ungrateful adult children who have chosen estrangement away from their parents and their families simply can't reconcile. even when they want to.
Even if we're to put all the very sick things she says aside for a bit, we can't ignore how consistent she is with calling adults children. And that's very likely one of the biggest issues with just how she thinks about all this. Children generally have less understanding of things and place feelings over reality. And that is exactly what Laura ceaselessly accuses her daughter of doing. She's failed to come to terms with the fact that her daughter is no longer a child, but an actual adult. I mean, she has her own husband now. Unlike when everything could easily have been labeled as tantrums, when she was a child, right now conversations need to be had when concerns are raised. But it's clear that taking accountability is a concept that is quite alien to Laura. A simple, "I am sorry" or "I hear you" could very likely have remedied the situation, but she doesn't believe that parents have any reason to apologize to their kids, because according to her, they're good parents, and the kids are the ones who need to check themselves.
The peace you feel without their presence in your life is worth being a villain in their story. Don't you worry, you just let them talk. Let them try to team up to go against you. It don't matter. It brought you peace. Don't you worry about it. Because I guarantee you, they're going to try to go get a whole team to team up against you. They're going to try to get friends to not like you. At the end of the day, you block them all. And you might can leave one or two so they can go back to headquarters so they can tell everybody what's going on. But majority of the time, I'll block them all. One band, one sound.
She's literally the one looking for a team to validate her baseless feelings, but she's somehow using this against her daughter. Narcissism must really have a thinking inhibiting effect on its victims, because how do you call yourself so blatantly in an attempt to shame someone else? She also talks down on self-introspection on the part of her parents.
If you're ruminating over not being able to make sense of what has happened between you and your ungrateful adult child, take that as a good sign. It means you haven't been brainwashed by the same society that's gotten to them and taught them that how they're treating you is okay.
In relationships, you should, as she calls it, ruminate on things, especially when there is a breakdown in the relationship. It's just common sense. It's a no-brainer to make that even more applicable in a relationship as important as a family relationship. Parents are not barred from having conversations with themselves to figure out what went wrong. The time spent retelling this story to make the child appear like the villain should be spent seeking a second option, because we don't always have all the answers and we can't see the full picture when we're too close to the board.
Parents, stop trying to help and heal your ungrateful adult kids when they don't want to do so for themselves. You're only weakening them and delaying their growth, and you're weakening yourself, delaying your own growth, and sending yourself into fits of exhaustion. You were never meant to carry their burdens. Know when to stop doing that. And that's in adulthood.
Laura has a lot of these videos where she shares very weird takes on things. In this video, she implies that her kids owe their parents for any good done.
If you're still paying your adult son's phone bill and he's not paying you back, and on top of it, he goes estranged, stop paying his phone bill. He is completely ungrateful, and you shouldn't have been paying it all along. Shame on him.
What do you mean, and they're not paying you back? A relationship between parent and child is definitely not meant to be transactional. It's not a scratch my back and I scratch yours kind of relationship. How do you even nurse the thought of having a child when you're not ready to love unconditionally and hope that even when things go south, things will still get better at the end of the day? Why even bother having kids in the first place if it's so easy to do away with them? Many parents pay bills for their kids regardless of their age, and it has not driven any of them into estrangement. Some users commented on this exact thought. I pay my 3 adult kids' cell bills, all on the same account, and I love it. One small thing I can do for them. We all pay our grown children's phone bills to make it easier for them. I pay all my grown kids' phone bills. I do it because they no longer need my help. They are married with homes. It makes me feel good to at least do something. There you have it. Actual parents thinking and acting like parents do, not looking for more reasons to be out of their kids' lives. From the looks of things, Laura is totally fine being unable to contact her daughter. She's also quite against talking about it as long as it has anything to do with reconciliation.
No, you don't need to explain yourself to others who insist that you need to reconcile with your estranged adult children simply to make themselves feel better. You know your story the best. And they need to respect that or tell them to pop off.
With Laura, it's just an onslaught of terrible, terrible hot takes that seem to have been passed through no proper thinking process. One of her most controversial ones yet is her advice to estranged grandparents to still show up at the events their grandkids participate in. How exactly do you tell your grandkids that you're there for them and support them when they can clearly see that you have a terrible relationship with their own parents? That's just going to start up more trouble. You stand the risk of getting a restraining order filed against you for doing something that reckless. Laura continues to show that she is in dire need of a class in respecting boundaries, but she's the one telling people that they need to be educated. She's called out for violating the boundaries of her loved ones, and she replies with, "Who said that? Sitting in the back of the room and watching violates no boundaries? Boy, you guys make huge leaps in your comments. I suggest if you're going to do that, educate yourself." Such boldness to respond like she's the one that needs an education in that regard. Her account is filled with many more videos that leave you wondering if everything is all right with her. It started to look like a desperate plea for attention. She overshares and gives out very unnecessary information for no reason at all.
I decided not to hang up one of my adult child's stockings this year. Yeah, I still did them. And I decided not to hang hers up, not because I'm warning the adult child whose behavior resulted in our estrangement. I'm warning the adult child who I thought she was. And it's just too hard.
No. You don't need to pay for your adult child's health insurance. If she's on your plan and she's decided to go estranged, and especially if she has her own job and gets health insurance through there, you have every right to take her off. You're not going to hand her a gift as she's kicking you out the door. My Lord, don't worry about what the impact will be on whether or not you eventually reconcile, because I promise you, she isn't.
Her takes on relationships with an estranged child come off as hatred, not setting boundaries. For a child you claim to have raised out of love, there should be no reason to even think about taking that person off your health insurance plan, especially if it's something you can do for them. Every good thing becomes a tool to be weaponized in driving home a point that should not even be driven in the first place. And the one time someone asked her to share the full story of what went down between her and her daughter, she turned it into a PR session for her book.
Well, you keyboard warriors are working overtime now, aren't you? This comment here, though, this I respect. Because she's right, I haven't shared my story. And I haven't because I had to get through a very painful moment in it before I felt ready to do so. And I did that last weekend. So now I'm ready to share. But as a writer, my most effective means of communication is by writing. So I put my story here. If you legitimately want to know my story and why I began Doormat Mom No More TikTok and Doormat Mom No More Facebook group, read it. I welcome you to read it. And you'll understand why these comments that these keyboard warriors are leaving, they don't faze me. For everyone else who chooses just to troll for the sake of trolling, thank you. Thank you for legitimizing what I'm doing here. And, by the way, I'm not a boomer. I'm Gen X.
For someone who somehow has the time to post videos and even engage in book review sessions, that was the lamest excuse to give. Even if she decided to share this story in bits, people wouldn't mind. To her, it's just an opportunity to sell her book to more people. Laura is clearly not interested in having a working relationship with her daughter. She's fine just riding on the wave that she's stirred up for herself. More attention is given to raking in the cash than fixing what is broken in the home. For those of us who have not and will not read her book, we're in luck. Some reviewers have done us the favor of calling her out on some very interesting things she wrote in the book. First off, she dedicates her book to her daughter, the same daughter she's estranged from. Laura's victim mentality and blame game are on a very serious high. In the book she writes, "To my youngest daughter, for causing me to unexpectedly stumble across some really good parents who needed me just as much as I needed them." As is typical with Laura, she had to find a small space to still make it about herself by saying that they needed her. The last part of her needing them too is just a cover to not look so full of herself. But at this point, it's easy to see right through that veil. One reviewer left a very expository summary of her book on Amazon. Doormat Mom No More promises empowerment, but instead delivers a toxic, condescending guide that insults its readers while promoting a selfish, disconnected approach to parenting and life. Rather than offering practical advice, the book is a thinly veiled manifesto of resentment, rife with outdated stereotypes and questionable, tough love strategies that do more harm than good. It doesn't empower readers to make healthier choices. It encourages them to adopt an unbalanced, entitled perspective that prioritizes their own convenience over meaningful relationships. Honestly, this is exactly all we've seen from her TikTok videos. From the hot takes she has to the very terrible advice she gives her followers and her poor and unfounded defenses, there has never been any form of balance in the equation. Her views constantly reek of a sense of entitlement that nobody should have.
When you stop betraying yourself in order to be part of your adult child's life is when you start living your life and stop living theirs.
She never gives room for the child who chose estrangement to be right, like that's an actual impossibility for her. Even when it looks like she's about to acknowledge the hurt of the other person, she yet again switches to entitlement and defense mode, making invalid whatever show of empathy she tried to pull off, just like in this video.
So for all the estranged adult kids who continue to push that you were the children in the room at the time, that's absolutely true. But then you also need to acknowledge that as children, you had limited understanding, a lack of discernment, and a vulnerability to outside influences that you had no idea was playing a part in creating your childhood. So maybe your feelings are right, but they may not be accurate.
The reviewer also had more to say about the book in the same light. The author refuses to even entertain the possibility that a parent might bear some responsibility for a fractured relationship. Instead, they lean into the idea that the parent is always the victim, absolving readers of the need to reflect on their own actions. This kind of thinking is not only dishonest, but also toxic, as it prevents real growth or healing. Relationships are two-way streets, and repairing them requires humility, accountability, and self-awareness, none of which this book encourages. Another reviewer noted something she wrote in the book. Just because kids have been educated on types of abuse doesn't mean they're capable of identifying it in their parents, especially considering the mental health of kids today is the worst it's been in 2 decades. To say that kids will not be able to spot abusive trends in their parents is wild. So kids can be taught to put a check on abusive people but not their parents? Most people find it easier to spot when they're being mistreated than to recognize when they're the one doing the damage. But knowing the terms doesn't mean you understand the impact. A huge part of why kids struggle mentally today is because they're raised by parents who won't admit the harm they cause. If you want to do better, start by listening. Really listening. You don't get to quit on your children, but you also don't get to control them when they choose freedom. Blood doesn't give you the right to their lives. Your adult children owe you nothing. And when it comes to what's best for them, their judgment is not only valid, it's probably more accurate than yours. Laura would gladly do anything but take responsibility for her actions, though.
There's a difference between accountability and coercive control. The first makes you a good parent. The second places you at the center of emotional manipulation. Know the difference when dealing with your adult kids, even if they don't or simply don't want you to. Society has taught our adult kids from about the teenagers on
that we should earn their respect. Let me say that again. We, good parents, should earn their respect. And the ungrateful ones in the bunch bought a hook, line, and sinker. Instead of, they should earn our respect. See, they expect respect to come as easily as unconditional love does, but they're two different things. So if you want parents' respect, it's simple. Earn it.
Respect is earned both ways, and to think that your child who has grown into an adult has no right to demand that respect be earned is really absurd. The fact that she feels her child has no respect for her speaks volumes of just how bad a parent she must have been to her. Over time, kids see the labors of their parents and the efforts they put in to make them better, and that's all they need to respect their parents. It's both the little and the great things. Not being respected by your own child should make anyone have a self-evaluation to try and figure out what went wrong along the line. If her claim of being close to her other kids is true, well, it means there was something totally different about her handling of this particular child of hers, and it's high time she gave herself common sense and just did a self-evaluation. Laura also does not fail to use the religion card. God never catches a break with these religious narcissists, like he doesn't have enough to worry about. God sees the hearts of all good parents as he is, in fact, the Supreme Father. If he wants a reconciliation between you and your adult child, you will have it. If not, trust that he has his reasons. One thing's obvious, Doormat Mom does not care so much for a reconciliation. I mean, if you want to change, actually put in the work. Don't make it look like God has to wave a magic wand to get you two talking. Technology can do that for you just fine. Pick up the phone. Send a text that you would love to have a conversation. Fix a time and have an honest conversation where you accept your own faults and make peace with your daughter. See how easy that is? Just leave God out of it. The icing on this very terrible story is that Laura released her book on the week of her daughter's wedding. In her words, I chose to release this book the week of her wedding in Australia. Oddly, the collision of these two events somehow made sense to me and brought me comfort. Time and again, she's proven that in the relationship between adult and child, she's the child. The more mature response of being mute on social media has come from her daughter. Quite the irony. She even sent a message taking back her blessing for the wedding. This whole story just feels like one where a sore loser doesn't know how to take a loss and has decided to throw tantrums. Only this time, the sore loser caused her own loss, has refused to own up to her mistakes and be better, and has decided to publicly expose herself for who she truly is, a narcissistic, entitled mother who urgently needs to seek help from a therapist. There definitely is a chance at redemption for her. But first, she must put down her writing pen, take down her social media accounts, or repurpose them, and take some personal time to focus on what truly matters, her own family.